My name is Escher Glick,
I'm Tor Hagman.
and we're working on a program called Flick.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to go over what we've done and tell you some things we've learned, and then go over the difficulties we've encountered and how we're trying to overcome them. So this is kind of a bullet point list, but you'll notice the second one on there is how not to use Git, and that's how we were using it for the last month.
Effort.
Yes, where we thought we were committing things and they weren't being pushed. Yes. We didn't come to office hours, we were very sorry. So if you don't know what you're doing, please go to office hours because it'll fix your problems much sooner and that's my pitch. You'd be better than me. But we've researched a lot of how X works, and we're excited that we now have the first bullet point up here, a connection structure that lets us create a dynamic server and client sockets over TCP or UDP. And what we've really done is fleshed out a lot of how Flick is going to work in a conceptual sense on the network. I'm sure I'll hand off to Asher to talk about networking layouts.
In the end, there'll be roughly these 3 different networking modes. One where all the computers are connected to each other. This would mostly be on a LAN, where everybody can just do anything with anybody. Then you have something where if I'm talking to Tor and he's over in China doing research, I can't actually connect to him over an actual LAN. So one of us will connect to the other one via a server. So he'll either be a server or I'll be a server, and we'll just use a basic IP address. That's the one that we're going to start focusing on more, because as of now it's the simplest one, and once we get that going, we can then work on the other 2 to make it more community related. The problem with the first one, though, is that you need an IP address. With the full mesh, what it does is it sends out a broadcast message to the entire network asking who's on it, and it will just give you a list of who's connected, so you don't actually have to know what an IP address is in order to use it.
So we had a lot of questions about how do you actually envision doing this, and how will this be possible to make a X multiplexer like Screen. I'm sure most of you have at least heard of Screen, if not used it yourself or use it every day extensively. So what a program does is when you start a program, if you're using a library like GTK or something like that, at some level it has included these X libraries that let you create windows, get open displays, and show the window to you on those displays. Each of those is an X client. X clients are separate from the X server because it's a client-server model, like a lot of things. And but all that really that you see on your machine is I opened a window and it was displayed to me, and then I can interact with it. That's because what you're looking at is not on the network at all, although it can be. This is only a little different with these parts more expanded, so you can see how the communication occurs. It's then possible to split how the client talks to the server over a wire, and that's what we want to do. We want to make, in the example of the star model, where we have a centralized node and the branches coming off of it. Each of those branches would be clients, and the top one is just a server that manages all the clients, and then talks to the machines to interact with the windows.
We've run into a lot of difficulties over it, figuring out that a lot of the shortcuts that we tried don't work. We've seen a bunch of other, I'm wrong. Yeah, so we weren't able to figure out a way to switch the display environment just by switching the display value. Yeah, so we found one program that comes with X, which is XHost, that allows us to change what can actually connect to X. But that's also looking like it's not going to work either.
Not how we want it to, but it gives us a little step in the right direction, because you also want to specify, we want to be able to communicate through like who has authorization to view your windows, or to just you to send windows to. So the connection there has to be authorized for you at a time, and that's what RCOS can do for us. So something that some of you may have heard is that X is going away, and that's so what that actually means is the two main Linux distributions, Fedora and Ubuntu, in coming versions will replace X as the display manager with this product called Wayland, and that's because in the client-server model we were talking about before, something that's actually simplified there is that how input actually gets drawn to the screen. What happens is when the user gives input, it interacts with the program, and then the program spits back information to X to tell it how to draw it. But X doesn't actually do the drawing in most modern systems. There's this thing called the compositor in between that does that. What Wayland does is it actually draws it to screen, all in one thing, and handles communication, and with the use of peripherals like the mouse and keyboard. So, are we writing code that will immediately convalesce? No, because what happens is Wayland runs an X server as a headless client, and X can't go away. X has been around since 1986, so we're not concerned about that. So that's I just want to say we don't address anyone who because I spoke to people at Hackathon who thought that we should just wait until Wayland came out, so this multiplexing would be easy.
The future plans is, because of the way X works, whenever you run a program over an SSH tunnel, the program never knows that it's being run on a remote computer. It thinks it's just being run locally, because there's an X emulator that sends, currently it sends output to SSH, which then gets sent over SSH to an X server. What we're planning on doing is taking that output of the X emulator and redirecting it to wherever we want. But we don't want to just send it over plain text, just for the same reason that SSH is encrypted. We don't want Peter to steal our programs. Yeah, Peter. So we want to be able to send it anywhere, but only specifically to where we want it to, without running into any problems.
So we have a little bit of a step. So that's my machine there, and that's running Ubuntu, and this is Asher's MacBook. And what we want is eventually. Can you open the terminal for me? Oh, that's nice. Is you generally you can always shell remotely into a terminal. I don't know my IP address. So this is my shell on that machine that I'm accessing remotely. And I'm sure Asher doesn't have gedit on this Mac. Well, that's a problem. So we can't actually show you what we wanted to simulate today. But what would ideally happen is, since Asher's MacBook here is you'd be able to open gedit on this machine. It's actually running on my machine over here, but you'd have the X window on Asher's machine. But you'd be able to detach from it and give it back to mine. And that's what Flick will do.
Say that again. What was the last statement you said?
What Flick will do is basically what I'm doing here manually. I've terminaled into my Linux machine which has a program on it like gedit that I want to use to view something. So I'm on I'm on Linux and I have gedit over there. So when I do gedit ampersand over here, it tells that machine to start gedit, but the X window should be sent over the internet to be displayed on this machine so I can interact with it. Eventually, what Flick does is it lets you say, okay, now I'm done with the text document that I've partially written on this computer. I want to detach the window and have it be on that machine, because that's not what it does right now. The program is running on that machine, but its visual is over here.
Do you, I mean, you were talking about like piping the socket to a different server, that if you have an X client connected to one server, and then all of a sudden you pipe it to a different server, one, all the initialization won't happen again, and two, it will crash immediately because it will get out of sequence messages. So how are your, like, do you have a technique yet for the switching?
The original idea would be to actually try and start a new window, right? So if I'm trying to pass a gedit window from one computer to another computer, what it does is it starts a new gedit window and passes all of the information settings from the old gedit window into the new one to make it look like it's the same one. We haven't actually tried that yet, and we're sure we're going to run into a lot of problems.